Blog Talk Radio.
You're tuned into In5D Radio, the next dimension in radio, where we bring you the hottest, in-depth, spiritual, metaphysical, esoteric conversations and news. Get ready for spirit, body, and mind to expand in 3, 2, 1.
Greetings, and welcome to Quantum Healing with Candace. I'm your host, Candace Craw-Goldman. This program was created to assist humans in this rapidly changing world, and its foundation is based upon the late, great Dolores Cannon's work and humanity's new understanding and acceptance of the quantum world and the role that consciousness plays in shaping both our individual and our collective reality. I am a full-time practitioner of Dolores' method and had the honor and privilege of working with and alongside of her for several years. I'd like to thank not only In5D.com, Greg Prescott and Michelle Walling in its support of this show, Dolores' legacy, and all of those continuing her work in discoveries and healing. I would also like to thank Dolores Cannon, QHHT.com, for sponsoring this show this evening. Tonight is October 16th, 2015, and we're going to have a really fun time tonight because a great friend of mine and a wonderful colleague, Andy Neville, is going to be joining me. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Sandy right now. Sandy is a QHHT practitioner, just like myself, and she's based out of Lawton, Oklahoma. She grew up on a farm, though, in central Alberta, Canada, way far away from Oklahoma. And as she describes it, she was divinely transplanted to the American Heartland back in 2002. She has a background of being an energy healer, uniquely using a combination of Reiki, crystals, sound, and the Lemurian language in her healing sessions. And in January 2014, she became a QHHT practitioner after having her first session with me earlier that month. And she was, at the time, identified as a second-wave volunteer as per Dolores Cannon's work. Sandy is currently writing an autobiography describing her fascinating journey and experiences as a volunteer. She's also recently begun writing a manuscript in an unknown language, which she receives during meditation with a special ancient crystal skull. And that skull has some photos on our show tonight. I hope you can see those scrolling by. I'm kind of new to uploading photos, but I hope you guys can see them as we're talking about that. Sandy has had numerous out-of-body experiences, to include traveling through the universes and to the heart of the consciousness of God. She's really a cool lady. And along with her QHHT practice, Sandy is working on a project to create a community in southwest Oklahoma where people can feel safe and free to explore things like consciousness, ET contact, etc. And she's working on programs. And that whole idea this year into next of 2016. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to my good friend, Sandy Neville. Sandy, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Good evening, Candace. It's wonderful to be here with you.
I'm really so glad that you're here. You know, as I was reading your biography, I was thinking, honey, didn't we have our first session in the same month you became a practitioner? Did it really work out that way?
It really did. I had already decided to become a practitioner, but before I made that final decision, I told myself I have to have a session because I have to experience it first. So that's why I actually waited until the day after I have a session to sign up. And then I just kind of went through all of the material it wasn't quickly, but steady. And, became a practitioner that month.
Right away. Oh, that's amazing. And so one of the things that you're going to be telling us about is the session that we had that day.
Yes, that was very interesting. I had come to you for lots of different reasons, but mostly that time I really wanted to know, where I came from. I knew I was not from here. There was a lot of different indicators on that, and I had tried several different methods to find out, and I really didn't know too much. I didn't get any good feedback that I was satisfied with. And then a friend of mine loaned me Dolores' book, The Three Waves of Volunteers and the New Earth. And I was reading that, and it clicked. And I said, finally, somebody understands. And there was,
if I would have had a nickel for every time I've heard that story from people who figured out that they were volunteers from reading Dolores' very famous book, The Three Waves of Volunteers.
It was a breath of fresh air for me, because everyone that I had talked to would say, oh, you're an old soul, we've been here for hundreds of thousands of years. And I would go, no, this is not me. I'm not from here. So when I read her book, it just clicked, and I knew I had to have a session.
It was a very memorable session for me. I remember one of the first things that you did after coming in and taking off your coat was reach in your bag and unwrap this amazing crystal skull.
I have a way of doing weird things like that. The crystal skull was very important to me, and I knew it played, and it was going to play a huge role in my life, but I had no idea how it was going to unfold. And I don't even think I was expecting a whole lot of information that day. I just wanted to bring it and see if what I was thinking was actually right, or if I was way off. We did discover in the session more about the skull, and that was very illuminating. As we go on in the program, we'll discuss the skull more and what I've been able to do with it.
Well, I have to tell you, Sandy, that's the first crystal skull that ever came into a session, and it was it was memorable and wonderful. And then there was something else that you did. Do you remember before the session you were telling me about that language that would sort of come out of you spontaneously? And I asked if you would speak a little of it even before the session. Do you remember that part?
I do remember. It wasn't a long message, but it was a short message, and it was to you. It was a greeting. I believe that I had said something about sisters. It's nice to see you again, or something like that.
It was so interesting because, as Sandy had described, she spoke this language but wasn't quite sure what she was saying as she was speaking it. And I said, well, can you speak a little? And we recorded it. And then it was during the session, during the latter part of the session, when we were asking all of your questions to your higher self, that your higher self translated that little bit of speech. And that was really fascinating. I don't think I'll ever forget that.
That was a first for me. I usually when I'm speaking the language, I sometimes will get, pictures or symbols in my mind, but I really don't interpret the message at all. So I was as surprised as you that through the higher self, I was able to say in English what I had said in this other language.
Mhm. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the session as you remember it? Just tell us the story.
Sure. Well, I had wanted to first say that, when I decided to have a session, I went to Dolores' website and I started scrolling down the list of practitioners. And your picture was there, and I knew immediately. It was like a soul recognition, and I had to see you. You're in Kansas, and I'm in Oklahoma. You're about 5 hours away from me. But I had to make the trip up there to see you. It was very important. And come to find out in the session, it was important. So it's really one of the things that I'd like to tell people is listen to those hunches that you get. Listen to that quiet voice that says, maybe do this. Because your higher self is always talking to you. We just have to listen to it. So
that's certainly true, and I have to say that I hear this story a lot, and not just from my own clients, but of course from other practitioners on our support forum about how people just come up in a very special way, certain people, specific people, and the connections are made that way for clients. And sometimes it's not just the closest one or the one with the most experience or anything like that. It's the one that makes the greatest connection, and you do have to kind of listen to your heart. But I'm so glad that you did come up, and we've been very good friends ever since and had lots of great chats, just texting and messaging back and forth, and it's fun to do that with you on the air today, Sandy. You're a special lady, and I really look forward to reliving some of this fun information that we've already talked about a little bit a couple times before.
Yeah, I will. I'll just kind of get right into the session here because we've got a lot of things to cover, and please just jump in whenever you are feeling like you have a question or something, okay?
Sure. Actually, I kind of do have a question. Right before you start, how did you even come into possession of that crystal skull? And, after you tell us that, then just tell us about the session. But I bet our listeners would like to know, how do you even manage to have a crystal skull?
Well, you can go to practically any crystal shop anywhere, and they have crystal skulls in there. And, I have several other ones. They're nice, but they're not special like this one. What happened was I went to a crystal healing class down in Dallas, and the lady had just acquired 2 crystal skulls. And they were ancient, very similar to the one that I have, but she had these 2, and they were set up on a crystal, a grid that she had made, and I was drawn to the smaller one. The smaller one had, like a little ribbon through it or a little rope through it, and it would have been worn around your neck. So as she was talking, I was concentrating on that particular crystal skull. What happened was we started doing a meditation there, and she said to, everybody could go ahead and pick a crystal skull or pick a crystal off the table, and I actually was very close to that one, and I kind of grabbed at it, and the instant, I had to have that one, right? The instant that I touched it, I was transported to what I would call Mongolia or China. It looked like that, what would you call it? The dresses, the landscape. It was what I would recognize China as, and even the facial features of the man that I saw was it looked Mongolian. So anyway, I had this experience with this particular skull, and I asked her if I could please, purchase it from her. And she said no. And I was heartbroken. So I said, well, is there any way that wherever you got this, does he have any more? And she said that he did. And she made contact with him. And the longer story short, I ended up purchasing this skull sight unseen. I just knew that this was it. This was the one I was supposed to have, and paid the man, and he shipped it to me. And when I opened it up, I nearly fell on the floor. When I opened the box, I nearly fell on the floor because I said, I know you. I have seen you before.
Wow.
It was sold to me as a crystal skull that someone had dug out of the ground in China. The guy thought that it was about 5,000 years old, which is pretty old, but it's not really old for a rock because the earth is made of rocks and crystals and everything. But in the session, it was discovered that it was actually much older than that. That the skull had been carved around about 10,000 years ago. Although I will say that whenever I have asked the higher self particular dates or numbers or years, sometimes that varies a little bit. So, whether it's 5,000 or 10,000, to me it doesn't really matter because I have this connection to it.
Right, and that was one of the reasons that you had come for the session, or at least you brought the skull with you, kind of like your friend. and pulled it out, and it sat there, I believe, on the little white table that I have, and then we had a session that day, that January day, 2014, and so tell us about the session, how you found it. You said that you'd done other explorations. How was this different, and what was it like? Everyone wants to know, who hasn't had a session, what it's like to have a QHHT session. So let us know what it felt like from the beginning.
Okay. Well, from the beginning, I have been hypnotized. My father was a man who would sometimes hypnotize us, and so it wasn't anything scary for me. It was just a different state that I would be in. The difference between the hypnosis and other modalities is that through the QHHT, you're actually talking to and through yourself, like your higher self is talking to and through you. So there's no interpretation there, like through somebody else. And that's what I had learned by reading Dolores's book. And that's what really drew me to her method, was because I had all kinds of people tell me, one story after another, oh, you're from here, you're this, you're that, this, and none of it rang true, ever. So I wanted the information to come from my higher self, because I trusted my higher self. I know that my higher self is working for me, that has the best intention for me. So that's where I wanted the information from. And that's also why I decided to become a practitioner, is I can ask questions all day long, but I don't want to interpret for anybody. I want people to know that they can get the information from themselves. And through the QHHT, it kind of unlocks that. And if you continue listening to the recordings, I think you become familiar with listening to your higher self. Now, some people don't listen to the recordings all the time either, but That's one of the things that this method allows to happen. So when I was hypnotized up there at your place, I was laying on the bed, and I could hear you talking, and I was very aware of being in the room. It's not like I left and I went anywhere. There was part of me that still was aware that I was in the room, but I could see the images and hear what was going on when my eyes were closed. So for me, it was like watching television. I was seeing these scenes, and I knew that I was in these scenes, but I was watching me. I was like the third person watching me in these scenes, which was kind of interesting and a little bit weird. But I've had some other experiences like that when I do, like flying dreams and stuff. So I knew that it was my way of understanding communication. Everybody's different. Some people might be the actual character that they're seeing themselves in the hypnosis. Some people are, feel if they're going through a traumatic scene, they're going to feel things. They might be weeping or crying or very, very joyful or happy or laughing. So each session is really different. That's one of the amazing things, too. And as a practitioner, you really have to be ready for everything. But that's one of the things.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Especially, when someone, lands, and I say lands, but they don't necessarily land, but they come upon a scene that's, very traumatic right at first. And you're trying to anchor them into the scene, and they're not necessarily fighting it, but it's just a little overwhelming going into the scene. So as practitioners, we're able to, what's the word I want to use? Take away the emotional part of it just enough to anchor them, and then have them. They can still feel it, but it doesn't affect them as traumatically as they would if we just continued on.
So how did your TV show start? How did your session start? Got you off the cloud, and then what happened?
Yeah, I was off the cloud and out in space. It was black. It was dark. I knew I was in space, and there were stars everywhere. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe, which was one of the major issues for me. I think that's even one of the first things I said is, oh, I can breathe. I did not have a body. I had an essence. I could move around, but there was really nowhere to go. And I remember you saying or asking who told you to go up there, or who told you to be out in the stars. And I kind of chuckled and I said, you did. And so you brought me back to the place where we were sisters, and we were out in a field. It was dark. We were looking at the stars. We were young, probably 5 or 6. And I was the older sister. You were the younger sister with the dress on and little braids in your hair. And we were looking up at the stars, and we knew that we were from different places. We were telling each other how to get to where we were from. And through the questions that you asked, you had asked, how do I get to the place I was from? And I told you that you go through the last star of the Big Dipper, of the handle of the Big Dipper. which is interesting because I have a history of looking up at the Big Dipper and longing to go home. It never really made sense to me ever, but that was, if there has to be a constellation, it is the Big Dipper. That's mine. So let's see, you were asking me if I could go there, and I said that I could, and so I just drifted up and through the last star and out into space. And then I believe you advanced time because that could have taken a long time. And I landed on a crystal planet, a beautiful, beautiful crystal planet. And when I landed, you asked me to describe myself. And I described myself as having a physical body, but it was very fluid, like it wasn't a solid body, but it wasn't liquid either. It was a light body, a very light, bright light color, white. And we basically, I had a head, I had shoulders, but the body form just kind of went down from there down to the ground. And when I landed there, all these other beings came out from the crystals to meet me. It was beautiful. It was like I had just come home. It was like a family reunion. I'd just come home, and there was thousands of beings coming out of the crystals to meet me and welcome me home. It was so overwhelming and emotional. I think even at that time I cried because it was just, I felt that so deeply that I was finally home.
I remember your emotions then, Sandy, and this is very common in QHHT sessions when the higher self brings the client to an experience where they're reminded of or shown a scene from home or reunited with their families. You know, the amazing thing about it is just how different they all are, right? And, you know,
right,
in these crystal beings, you know. It was amazing.
Yeah, it really is amazing. You know, I was there with these crystal, well, I call them liquid light beings because they were fluid. They weren't really liquid, but they weren't really solid, so that's what I call them. And what we did after that family reunion was we kind of broke up into like the family unit. And in my family unit, there was 11 or 12 of us. So we changed into crystal, and we went into our home, which was the crystals. We went inside the crystals, and we no longer really had our light body. We were part of the crystal, but we could move around in there. And
I remember asking you some of those questions because you were like, we're inside the crystal, and I was trying to find out, was there like a hollow space inside the crystal or something like that, and it was like, no. You were within in the crystal itself, yeah.
Exactly. We were in the crystal, moving around the crystal, and each person, how do I put it? Each being had their individual essence inside the crystal, and we could move around as we wanted to. So that was a little odd, you know.
Right.
I call it odd, but it's not really, not now.
No, and isn't it amazing to have that? Isn't it amazing to have that experience now in your memory? You know what it's like to move through solid crystal. You have a memory of that, and
yes.
you can talk about it. Isn't that just amazing and wonderful?
It is amazing. You know, one of the things I really struggle with is having to use doors because I know that I should be able just to go through that wall, and I can't do it in this body. So I kind of find that it's a little funny that that my higher self would show me a scene where I just moved through a crystal, which now is actually really important because I do that with my crystal skull. I learned how, and I'm sure I wouldn't have known that I could do that if I hadn't been shown the scene. I lived inside the skull. But I've learned to move my consciousness from my body and move it into the crystal skull. So that
very cool.
That's one of those things where when you have a session, your subconscious communicates on multi-levels. And at first, I had this wonderful session of going home to visit family on this crystal planet. But what my higher self was also including in that is that one day I would be able to move my consciousness from this body into the crystal skull.
Wow.
And and I would never have thought of that at that moment. I do like to play. I like to play with energies, and I listen to my higher self a lot. And when it just kind of suggests, maybe try that, and it worked. So,
what was life like on that crystal planet? Did we ask about that? I mean, how is it the same? How is it different than Earth?
Well, yes, you did ask quite a few questions about that. You asked what did we do on that planet, and really, the beings on the planet really didn't do anything. They were like the keepers of the crystals, keepers of the knowledge that was sent to the crystals from somewhere. It was sent to the crystals, and then it was retrieved from the crystals. And these beings were just kind of like caretakers. I'm not sure, because we didn't get into that, but I'm not sure exactly what they did. I just know that they did not have a life like we do on Earth. They got their nourishment from the crystals. They didn't eat food. They didn't need it. I remember you asking if this planet had vegetation on it, and as far as I could see, there was no vegetation. It was just crystals. And there was a sun. I remember seeing a sun, but there were no shadows, which I find interesting because on Earth, we have if we're in the sun, we have a shadow. On this planet, there were no shadows at all. And the light seemed to come from the crystals. So those were two very different aspects that just didn't happen here.
Yeah, that was amazing. And, it's funny when we have clients who are experiencing things like that, you can kind of see it in their face. They kind of scrunch up their forehead and everything, and they try to figure those things out. And I remember it being quite a surprise about, the light and the kind of light and how different the quality of light was there on the crystal planet. And even though there was a sun, like you said, there was no shadows. So, it's just a very different kind of reality than the one that we experience in our everyday 3D lives.
Exactly. Very, very different. And one of the things that I like to tell my clients is when you're in or experiencing the scene, don't try to figure it out. Just go with it. Just say what you're seeing, feeling, hearing, everything. It will all make sense at the end. And it always does.
Yep. It always does.
Yeah,
it does. So did we ask about the information, like what happened to the information? Where did the information go, or how was it used?
Yeah. The information was stored there. That planet did not actually use the information, but the information would be relayed to other planets and used in that way. So basically, that planet was like a storehouse of information. That's a really was.
That reminds me of something. How many sessions that I've had, especially ET sessions or space sessions or planetary sessions, how many different bodies out there are kind of like relay stations. They go through, or they attract energy, or they move it through, or they're just kind of like a stop along the way. It's very interesting,
right?
And it really talks to the idea about everything being connected, right? We always say that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We always say that, but what does it actually mean, right? Well, when you start to when you're a practitioner and you see and all these different realities and how it all works together, it is amazing. And then you walk, you need to go to the grocery store to get groceries, and it's almost comical how we live here and how we think that what we see, touch, feel is the only thing that is in existence. Because it's not.
Mhm.
So, I did. One of the things that we did talk about was that so I was on this planet, and this planet was in this universe, but that was like my first stopping place from coming from a different universe. And you could ask how that worked. And I believe I said that there was like an overseer that was in a collective group, and he projected the aspect of me as the light being on this crystal planet. It's actually like a cell. I like to think of it as an actual piece or a cell of that being placed on this other planet and having an existence as that light being. So I didn't stop there. That's one of the things, that I didn't stop at that planet. My existence went farther back than that.
Oh, I
so
see.
And we kind of talked a little bit, not too much, about where that overseer was from. And basically, pretty much the only information we received was that he was from a couple of universes over, and he had answered a call as well to come and assist. And that's pretty much, I think, all that we got from that.
And I think we asked how he did that, right? How did he? I remember this now, this next part, because you were very expressive with your hands. You talked about how they condense themselves to come to the planet. And I remember you using your hands to describe it, and it was very exciting for you to explain how that worked.
Yes. So the overseer would project himself onto a planet, and he's literally condensing his energy. And I say it could have been a female energy or a non-gender, I don't know. But they condense their energy down to a level, being into the liquid light being was semi-dense, but not entirely dense. So it could still, move in and out of a crystal, take the form of a crystal. So it had a lot of variance in that lifetime. But as I moved down, and I say down, maybe it's not down, but it felt down, every time I go to a different planet or a different level of condensing, it was like my body was getting, or my essence was getting squished and condensed. And there was lots and lots of different steps. And the closer I got to Earth, the more I had to be in a physical body. So I remember bringing pictures that I had drawn of being in an aircraft or in a spacecraft, where I was actually the ET looking at Earth through a window, and my higher self was saying, well, that's one of the times where I was getting closer to being, and you had to be in a physical body at that time.
So you made yourself dense then to be able to do that. That's the way you were talking about it. So this is,
Yeah, I remember just like I was being squished and compressed, very compressed. And I think that when I first came off the cloud and I was out in space and I could breathe, that's probably the first time that my mind made the connection that, oh my gosh, I'm not in a body anymore. I can really expand and just be everything. And it felt wonderful. But there was a lot of different steps in coming from a very high vibrational being down to a 3D human. Lots
and did
that
we
I had
explore?
to learn. Oh, go ahead.
Did we explore? Did we ask? What was the benefit then of doing that? What was the benefit of compressing yourself into the density to experience life as a 3D human?
Well, for me, there really wasn't a benefit for me personally. I had answered a call. The Earth needed help, and I had volunteered to come and help.
And this is where we discovered that you were a volunteer as per Dolores Cannon, and that part was confirmed.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
I had suspected that, of course, but that's
sure.
That's where it had came out, and it's like, oh, yep, I remember that. So,
did we find out anything else about the crystal life being, how that life ended, or anything else important about that lifetime before we went to talk to the SC? What was the rest of that experience like?
Yeah, the liquid light beings on that planet lived a very long time, and when their time on that planet was done, they would just transition to another place. So one of the things that we talked about too is the overseer. Like if he had sent out several different beings from his being, so several different aspects of himself, he would be able to draw those back like they were an arm. Like, if you had a human arm and it's out here playing a piano, you could think of just drawing it back. That's exactly the image that I had of how those beings were, like they were just drawn back to their bigger essence, I would say.
I see. Okay. And so what did the SC tell you then about this lifetime, and why it was important to show all of what you saw about the crystal planet in that session? What was important for you to see? Why was it important for you?
Why was it
important? We always ask that question. What was the most important reason we showed Sandy that lifetime and that experience?
Yeah. I needed to remember where I came from. The SC had said that I was a very powerful energy on this earth, and I often wonder, why am I in Oklahoma? This is not necessarily a place, you and I have talked about this often. This is not necessarily a place that I would normally choose to live. But as I've said, I have been divinely transplanted here for a reason. And what we have found out is that the energy that I'm carrying is to stabilize this area, Oklahoma, and probably a larger area than just the Oklahoma area. A lot of earthquakes that happen here. And I feel those before or after they happen. I feel the aftershocks through my body. In fact, I often will get so tired that I will have to lay down. And when that happens, I know that an earthquake has happened or is going to happen.
Really?
And that's, yeah. And that's one of the things that I learned after the session, or actually through the session, but I had been following the earthquakes for probably a year, and I knew they were really important to me, and I knew that Oklahoma was having more, and they were getting larger in magnitude, and it was a huge concern to me because I'm living right here, and they were more frequent, and I don't like earthquakes, so I always was thinking, we have to move, we have to go somewhere. This is not, I'd always ask my higher self, is this a safe area? Because look what's going on. And my SC told me that I'm in this place for a reason, that I'm actually, the energy flowing through me is stabilizing the area. Now,
hey, you know what, Sandy? I have to interrupt you by saying, you're talking about earthquakes, but I have a very vivid memory of last spring. It wasn't this past spring, but it was last year, wasn't it, with all the earthquakes? Wasn't it last spring? Maybe I don't know. I get my years mixed up. But there were so many tornadoes that were big storms, and they were just skirting right by you. Yeah, I mean, you managed to keep them away from where you were.
I learned how to do that because my SC said, go talk to them, use your language, and go talk to the tornadoes. So here I am. Everybody else is, taking cover, and I go outside, and I start speaking to the tornado in Lemurian. And I'm thinking, you're not going to hit us. You're going to go around my place and go somewhere else. And, you live in Kansas. You've seen tornadoes come up. They come up, they go down. They go up, they go down. And you never really know where they're going to hit. And there was one coming directly at us from the west. And I was outside telling it to go around. And I kid you not, it pulled the tail up, it went to the south of our property, and it actually hit 1 mile from our house. It should have been a direct hit to our house. It was that close. But I learned that I can speak to the weather, and
so, Sandy, when you have those tornadoes move, you have them go to empty fields, right? They don't take anyone else's house out, right?
Yeah, no, I don't want them to take anybody's house out. And
you don't want to send all the ones in Oklahoma to Kansas either, because I'm just north of you, right?
Yeah, right. No. They should just not be here. The tornadoes in the last several years seem to be getting worse and manipulated a little bit. And this is one of the things that I learned as I'm communicating to these storms, that it feels like a very angry energy that is swirling around. And indeed it is angry, but it's not really angry at anybody specifically. It's more like they know that they're being manipulated, that this energy is being kind of manipulated to do things. And that's what I'm picking up and sensing. And so when we go out there, when I go out there, well, I often talk in the third person as a collective we. So if I do that, just, I am talking about me, but I'll say we sometimes. So as I'm outside speaking to the tornado and I'm getting this message back that it's angry, and I'm thinking, well, what are you angry at? Because, we're not doing anything to you. It's telling me that it's been manipulated. And that's what I'm feeling with a lot of the earthquakes too. Most, if not all, of the earthquakes in Oklahoma are right at fracking operations. That's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. We really need to do something about that. I don't know what's going to happen, but it does need to be addressed on a national level that, we are causing some major bad things to happen here. There are alternatives, so, and I don't want to get into that too much tonight, but we do need to kind of step up our game as a human society living on a living planet,
Well, what else did the SC tell you about that session? Why, about the crystal and the crystal skull and other information for you?
Well, I had initially thought that the crystal skull might contain information, and it was confirmed that it does contain information. We asked who carved the skull, and they said that a man carved it a long time ago. So it's not anything that came off planet or anything like that. It is, natural to Earth. But we asked who encoded the skull with the messages. And I think there was a little giggle in there, and they said, we did. So a higher self encoded messages in there to be retrieved at a later date. We asked who the encoded messages were for, and they said for her, meaning myself, and that I would bring the information out at the right time. The skull was for the New World. It was not appropriate to find out any of the messages during that session that we had that day. It really didn't give us any more information about that than just, it was about 10,000 years old, carved by a man using primitive methods.
I think I remember hearing your SC saying that you should just sit with the skull and eventually you would get messages from it. So that's been a while now. So has that changed?
Well, it's changed a lot. I did sit with the skull for a long time, and, I'd be sitting there thinking, here I am. Are you going to talk to me sometime? And really, it was just like there was nothing. There was nothing. But always I would just say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. And eventually, yes, I learned how to move my consciousness from my body into the skull, and this was before I was getting messages from it. I was just playing. I was playing with energy. It was one of the things that I find fascinating. So, and I didn't actually even make that connection that until just like recently of the session moving in and out of the crystal on that planet as being able to do it here with this skull. I haven't actually done it with any other crystals either. It's just been the skull. However, I do it with another being quite often, which we'll get into in a little bit. We did kind of get the story behind this, finding the skull. And how the skull was found in China. It was a young boy who I, at the time, called grandfather. Now, this is all my subconscious talking. It was found about 6,200 years ago, and the boy thought that he had found a real treasure, so he kept it safe, and he passed it down to his granddaughter. Interestingly enough, in the session, there was reference made to both a grandson and a granddaughter. I kind of found that confusing, and so I took that into meditation and found out that they were twins and that they shared the same soul. And we know that people often share the same soul, or they can have a split soul where they're experiencing more than one reality at one time. And I think that that's what that was about. The grandfather eventually gave it to the granddaughter to keep safe, and she buried it. And I was given a visual of where the skull was found, and what I discovered was, after looking at a map, that it was at where two rivers joined, and I think that you say the name of the city in China, Zion, it's Xian. So however that it is pronounced in Chinese. We did find out that there are a few people that could retrieve the messages that's in the skull, but they're not anywhere close to where I live.
What did your SC say about the interesting language that you spoke? We asked that question during the session too.
Yeah, they said that it was Lemurian, and it was like a dialect of Lemurian from that area. So
from the same area where your skull was found.
Right. Which, that kind of makes sense. If I'm supposed to be communicating to it or to whatever, it all flows together really well that way. So I've actually had a conversation with a lady in Oregon who also speaks Lemurian, and we were just doing this for fun. We started a conversation. She would speak in her language, in her Lemurian language, and I would speak in mine. And then we just kept going back and forth. And then after a little bit, we compared notes. What were you seeing? What images were you getting? And I tell you, it was so close. The images that we were describing were not quite identical, but the meaning of the images were identical. So even though
the language that you speak reminds me a lot of, if our listeners have ever heard of Judy Satori's when she speaks. Have you heard that before?
No, I've
Judy
not
Satori,
heard her.
Yes. You need to look her up because she speaks an ancient language that sounds a lot like yours. I've been meaning to tell you that. I can't believe I've forgotten all this time. Every time we've spoken that I haven't talked about that, but that every time I hear her speak, I think it sounds an awful lot like the language that you also speak. So I bet you would even understand it, or the same way that this lady in Oregon and you had a conversation. I bet you'd feel the same way listening to Judy Satori's speech. It's Satori, I believe. So if you want to look that up, she's quite well known. She does some Mary Magdalene work too, which is very, very interesting. Sandy, we're about an hour in, and I want you to wrap up this session and tell us about your next session. The dragon session pretty soon, so we can hear all about that one too. Have we covered most of the interesting discoveries and revelations from that first crystal and session?
Yes. Yeah, pretty much the information about the skull is covered on that one. Yep.
Okay, great.
So,
well, the second session we had was a little more than a year later, and you came up to visit me, and this one was all about dragons. So tell us about this session.
Yeah, quite a far cry from Crystal Skull, and I did not bring the Crystal Skull that time. I came up to visit, and the reason that I came up to visit was you had asked me if I would be a participant on the SC Summit panel, and I thought that sounded like fun, so of course I jumped at the chance to do that. As it turned out, I wasn't.
Sandy, let's explain to our audience what that is. So during our reunion, QHHT practitioner reunion that we held in Arkansas and that we've had in the last 3 years, we held this event, and we did it with Dolores's blessing, where we had 3 people, 3 practitioners who would gather and be put into trance at the same time, and then we would contact their higher selves, and they would meet like in a little group. So it was like a group trance of 3 people whose higher selves would then convene and answer questions. And so we were getting ready to do that, and I had asked Sandy if she wanted to be part of SC Summit for that year. And she said, well, maybe, but she wanted to have another session first. So she came up to Kansas, and we were going to do some work asking about that and some other things. So that's why you were here for this session, and we got to meet a dragon. So tell us about meeting this dragon.
Yeah, we did. The interesting thing, I'm just going to lead up to this session, is after the first session, it was maybe about 3 months later when I started to see dragons around my property. There were different colors of dragons. They were everywhere. In my house, in outside when I'd be, sitting on my porch, whatever.
Now, are you talking, Sandy, tell our listeners, are you talking about actually seeing them physically or seeing them energetically, or what? What does that mean to you when you're saying that you're seeing dragons everywhere?
I was seeing them energetically. I could energetically see the color of them, feel different, like for instance, the first one that came to me was a yellow dragon. And it was kind of like a cartoon. You saw a picture of a cartoon of a dragon. This is what it looked like. And it was happy and young and joyful and just wanted to play and be happy. So, that was probably a really, really good introduction to me with the world of the dragons. Some of my other experiences that I've had, if that would have happened first, these other experiences, I might have freaked out a little bit. So this was a very gentle way. So I saw the yellow dragon first. They were not in the physical. Like, I could not have just went up and touched them. But I could sense their form. I could sense when they moved. I could sense if they were happy or if they were very serious or wise or just whatever the emotion or their essence was. I could sense that. So this started happening about 3 months or so after the first session that we had. And I really didn't tell too many people that, I was seeing dragons. I just, kind of went on my way, and, I started communicating a little bit to them because they were very insistent. And so eventually what happened was I came up to have a session with you, and they had been so persistent that I had to know what was going on. I also had a few lucid dreams with these dragons, and so I wanted those to be explained a little bit too. And I kind of laugh because as a practitioner, when someone comes in and they have 40, 50 questions on papers, and you're looking at you're watching. I have 2 hours to work with you. And that's what I did with you. I took up so many questions with me, but we eventually, kind of worked them down just to a few. One of the interesting things is when we were going over the questions that you were going to ask, you could sense a black dragon on my left side. And before I even told you that black dragon is always moving, you showed me with your arms what it was doing. And I said, yeah, that one's always moving. It doesn't say a whole lot, but it's wise and it's always moving. So even
wow, I don't remember that part at all.
Well,
I don't remember that part. Don't remember that part, but I do remember you talking about the big purple dragon in your session. I remember that very well, and you flying with him. That was such an amazing thing to listen to. That you got to meet this dragon and then fly with him.
Yeah, you had sent me off on the cloud, and when I came off the cloud, I was in a cave, and I had went up this mountain. It was a very difficult walk up this mountain, and I had gone up there with an old man. He wanted to show me something. So when we got up there were a lot of scrolls, old scrolls along one wall, and he told me to choose one. And so the number 7 came to mind, and so I counted out 7 and took the scroll from the wall. And as I untied it and I opened it up, out from the scroll came this very, very large purple dragon. It was about 3 times as tall as I was, and it was in the physical. I mean, I actually was touching it, and I could feel that it had scales on it. They were kind of hard. He was purpley metallic color, and I was in awe. There was so much love between this dragon and I, kind of like I knew him. And then he opened up his wings, and I was ecstatic. I thought, we can fly. And I looked over at the old man that took me up the cave, and he was just smiling at me. And so I looked back at the dragon, and I said, can we fly? And it didn't actually say the words, but it just indicated, yes, we could. So it bent down, and I crawled up onto his neck, and it took off, and we went out of the cave, and we were flying over the trees and all around the valley. We weren't like up at the top of the mountains or anything. We're just kind of flying just all over, and it was amazing. And then eventually, the dragon decided that it needed to turn around and fly back to the cave. So we did. We flew back to the cave, and I climbed off the dragon's back. And then I looked at the old man again, and he was just standing there, and he winked at me. And I remember looking back at the dragon, and just there was such a great love between us. I trusted him. Obviously, I trusted him because I went out flying with him, and it was just amazing. All of a sudden,
I don't remember if I asked you this, but as you're telling me the story, I'm wondering, when you were on the dragon's back, did you feel like a body temperature from the dragon? Was it cool or warm? Or I know you said it was sort of metallic, and now I was wondering, if you could feel a temperature, if you have a memory of that part of it.
Yeah, you did ask me, and I said he wasn't cold and he wasn't hot. So
okay.
He wasn't either. It was just he wasn't either. So I don't know what he was. He was just probably the same temperature as I was. So I don't know. And
then he exited the the scene in a very interesting way, as I recall. Tell us how he did that after you got off the dragon and the old man was there, and then the dragon goes away, and what happened?
Yeah, the dragon turned into a purple mist after I had climbed off his back, and I was watching him, and he turned into this purple mist. And that mist then went directly into my heart. And I could feel it in my heart. And then I could start to feel my body tingling, and the dragon was going everywhere. Like everything that dragon was, I now became. And I think that's really important to emphasize for those who are listening to this show, this part that you're describing right here. I mean, you had this experience with this dragon, and it got to fly, and there were some other things going on with it, and it was powerful and it was strong. And then after you experienced it directly as a separate being, then it turns into this mist, and then it goes into your body and into your heart, and you just said this, everything that was him, everything that was powerful and strong and etc. is now in you. I think that's just amazing. It was amazing. It felt amazing, and that literally changed my life. Having these other dragon experiences where you can see them, sense them, feel them, or whatever, it's kind of cool. But when the dragon comes and is part of you, and the dragon is in your blood, and you become one with that, the dragon is me. I am the dragon. And that was indicated in the SC part of the session, which is, kind of interesting how that works.
So your higher self then explained to you why you've had all of these experiences with dragons and why you had the session and got to meet the dragon. So what did the SC then tell you about that? The higher self.
The higher self, yeah. It said that I needed to know that I was the purple dragon, that the dragon lived inside of me, and that the dragon existed. This is kind of one of those mind-bending things. The purple dragon existed before I existed, myself as Sandy. The purple dragon, it was the purple dragon's decision to experience this reality along with me for whatever reason. And the purple dragon created this existence of me here on Earth now. So the purple dragon also exists in a different reality, in a different place, and it's also in more than one place. So I am part of it. It is part of me.
Hey, Sandy, hold on for a second. We kind of have a question here, maybe about some of the dragon experiences that you have. We have a caller named Greg. Let's see if Greg has a question for you. Hi, Greg. You're on the air.
Hi. How are you?
I'm well. Do you have a question for Sandy about her dragons or her crystals or anything else?
Actually, you just started to answer it like in the last minute.
Well, but go ahead and ask.
That was the question. I've had a lot of vision, dream experiences, and one of the confusing things that I've dealt with is sometimes I'm traveling to another place and I'll see a creature. It could be a dragon, it could be anything, and later on it will be revealed that was an actual person, and it was like the person's avatar that's been flying around. Like sometimes if it's more of like let's say a monstrous form, later on it will be revealed that was a specific person in pain, and maybe they were lashing out. Okay? But yet, at the same time, I've noticed that there will be those occasions where what I'm looking at is a version of myself, or that there's a good possibility that it's a separate entity that I'm looking at. And one of the issues is that sometimes those lines get blurred, and it's hard to really digest what's going on those experiences. Just recently, well, that's a whole nother story. But
well, I think, if I may interject, I think that we talk to the higher self in these QHHT sessions, these quantum healing hypnosis sessions, very much in the same way. It speaks to the client in these sessions, and we speak to the higher self back and forth, both with language and symbolism. So it's kind of a personal symbolism. So just as in dreams, in QHHT sessions, these things can be symbolic. They can represent something, either an aspect of you, an aspect of somebody else. You're right, something separate from you or whatever. And you're right again, too, about Sandy just being able, or just starting to explain the fact that the dragon was kind of a larger essence of her own being, who, the way her higher self described it, actually created her to experience human life. And isn't that interesting? Because we as humans talk about this idea that maybe we make up in our imaginations things like dragons. And here her higher self is saying, oh, no, what's really happening is the dragon was around much longer and decided to have an imaginative experience and make up life as a human, and now that's how you came into existence. I mean, isn't that just fascinating?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Whenever I thought about the question, well, I didn't take into consideration that somebody was leading the meditation. And I've known whenever, sometimes you can have these wild experiences where you're by yourself and you don't know where your, energy body is going. But I notice, if you pray for somebody about something that they already have the intent for, I notice Spirit will just hone right in to that very particular thing. So, whenever you mentioned that you were actually having a session with a goal, I guess that would increase the possibility that you're getting exactly, what you're asking for, because of more than one person focusing their, intent. So, that makes sense that way.
And having a facilitator there with the goals and the understanding and the knowledge of the person involved, So great question, Greg. Thanks for calling in.
Okay, thanks for answering. Bless you guys.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I would like to just say to Greg here that's one of the reasons that I really like this method of exploration, soul exploration, is because I have a facilitator that I've already talked to about all these questions that I have, and she's able to ask the questions and ask more questions and deeper questions and have me explain it to myself so that in words that I can understand and that it will make sense to me. That's one of the most important parts and aspects of quantum healing hypnosis. It was a huge gift that Dolores has given us with that. Again, because what I found is that oftentimes we will see things, people that perceive things in visions, they might see something, but it's not quite exactly as they perceive it. And I'm going to just jump off into something here where I had a client who was very scared of, extraterrestrials and had dreams of them and, was on a ship and had body parts and stuff. And when we went into the session, they weren't body parts at all. They were called like skin suits that ETs had to put on to come down and visit the Earth. So what we sometimes perceive on a human level is not exactly correct. So that's why, having a session was really important to me, because I really needed to know what these dragons were all about.
Mhm. I'm remembering that when we explored some of the reasons why you were seeing the dragon and why you had the session experience of the dragon was a lot like kind of why you're in Oklahoma, right? That the dragons were protecting points on the Earth, and weren't you told that when they were in 3D and other times or in other timelines or in other points, they were often very feared by humans and killed? So
yes,
they were simply doing their jobs, and I find that just really fascinating. So you got to learn more, not only about yourself, but about your purpose and about how your energy were intertwined with the dragons in a really beautiful way.
It was really beautiful and interesting how they expressed that they would love to be able to be visible to everybody, but they're so misunderstood. They were just doing their job. They were protecting what they call dragon lines or ley lines and specific entry points, which I assume were portals or something like that. And they were killed because they were protecting that particular spot or location. Now, if you do any research on it, and I've done a lot of research on it, most powerful buildings, like capitals of cities, everything is on ley lines. The pyramids are on ley lines. The everything that is important is on a ley line, and that goes back thousands and tens of thousands of years. Well, somebody knew that there was energy points along there. That's why they put them there. So these dragons were killed so that the people could put these buildings over there, and it's actually stopped the free flow of the energy of the planet. That's what I'm told anyway, that these buildings are kind of blocking it.
Interesting. And I love that part that you said they were dragon lines, but we call them ley lines now. I kind of like dragon lines better.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
Well, Sandy, why don't you tell us about how that session kind of ended? Because I know I want to talk to you about this meditation that you've that you want to tell us about, that was given to you by yet another dragon, a white dragon meditation. I thought it might be fun for us to kind of close out our show with that meditation. But I remember this second session had some really fun visitors at the end. You had a couple people come through at the end of your session, and tell us about that.
Yeah, Dolores Cannon came through at the end, and she was talking to both of us. One of the things that she had, you had asked, but she kind of revised being on the spirit side now and getting a much bigger picture, was how the practitioners or how anybody should really try to send out energy to help. We shouldn't be afraid, or we shouldn't think of it as interfering. We should just send out the energy to help and assist, and if people are willing, and when I say souls, I don't just mean humans, I mean plants, trees, water, everything. If they're willing, they will receive it. So that was one of the interesting things that Dolores had talked about. Another thing is that Dr. Emoto came through. And if people are familiar, Dr. Moto and Dolores passed and transitioned from this life to spirit, I believe, like 3 days apart.
Yeah, they're very, very close. And I think that was one of our questions, too, wasn't it, about them going at the same time? And I'd asked that question in other sessions before, but they confirmed it again. They're kind of, they're kind of the dynamic duo where they are right now.
Yeah, they seem to be, yes. They often come in together and have similar messages, well, very similar messages. They kind of work in tandem. They come in a lot. So Dr. Emoto was talking about his work with the water and how important our thoughts were. And he had proved through his work that our thoughts and emotions can actually change the vibration of the water. And, of course, we know that he took pictures of it, and each picture is of a different emotion. And he was saying that in the future, our thoughts would be very important and powerful, and that our thoughts could change things. And he meant to, like, for the better. So the more we work with this, the more we believe that our thoughts create things, the stronger that aspect of ourselves will be. Anytime anybody wants to get in touch with him, go through meditation and ask, and he'll be there. That was one of the interesting things too.
Mm-hmm. Well, super. Well, why don't you tell us about this global meditation and how you met the white dragon or learned about the white dragon who gave you this meditation. Tell us a little bit about all of that.
Sure. I just recently met this white dragon. I had a lucid dream about it, but so I knew that the white dragon was around. What happened was I was told basically that I needed to start meditating on the 18th of September. And when I started meditating, it occurred to me that I should probably get a pen and paper. So I did that. So I started meditating, and, I thought maybe I'd get a little message or something. And I actually was told to write. I mean, I could see the word in capital letters, write. So I got the paper, and I went to write something, and nothing in English came out. This other language. this other language and at first it was kind of really odd, but I trust my higher self, so I just started, whatever kind of marks it wanted me to do, I just kind of do it. And I wrote 4 pages that night. So the next night was the same thing. And I continued this for several days. And then I wanted to watch the full moon, the blood moon, on the 27th. So what I did was we went out and watched it, took a lot of pictures, and then I came in, I sat down, fully expecting that, another writing session was going to happen, but that's not what happened at all. When I sat down and closed my eyes and started meditating, just exactly the same way where the purple dragon appeared, this white dragon just appeared in front of me. Now, my eyes were closed, so it wasn't a physical dragon like in the session that I had, but I could sense it, and I knew it was there. And it was beautiful, just everything graceful and love and full, and it's just magnificent. And as I'm watching it, and we're looking eye to eye, and there's a transfer of love, and then this dragon turned into a white mist, and went into my body, into my heart, and then all through my body, exactly the same as the purple dragon did.
Gosh, Sandy, do you think that you're supposed to like just find every color of all of the dragons and then have all of those colors of mist come into you?
Here's what I think. I think the colors actually represent different things. I think that the purple dragon actually represents more of a transformation, the earth transforming. Mm-hmm. And the white dragon has to do with pure heart, pure knowledge, directly from the consciousness of God. I don't, I haven't really spent too much time diving into that just yet, but where the dragon went into my heart, and it went into every cell in my body, and I could feel that. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of bathed in that for a while, and then I opened my eyes, and I went to bed because I was tired. The next night, I went to meditate, and I actually, when I sat down to meditate, there was a clear crystal Merkaba that I immediately went into, and I was taken off planet. And I went out to, out into the atmosphere, and I could see the Earth getting smaller and smaller, and I kept going and going and going. And I eventually stopped at just darkness. I could see a few twinkling lights, like probably planets or stars or something. But I was just there in this vastness. And it was everything like loving and peaceful and joyful, and you were just bathed in love. And I asked, kind of out loud, where am I? And they said, you're in the consciousness of God. And I could feel it. I could feel all these different cells, all these different aspects of everything in the universe. Everything in the universe is in this particular space. And I was just kind of communicating a little bit back and forth to the consciousness of God, and they asked if I knew how long it had been. Well, I didn't. But they said that they had been there a long, long, long time. And then as I'm in this space, I kind of get this picture in my mind where there's an arc, like kind of like an electrical arc, and the consciousness of God actually starts to become like an orb, or like a circle, and it literally kind of splits off into two pieces, and there was like this arc that was connecting them. So I wanted to go over there and experience what that was, and they said that I could do it. So I just went over there, and it was awful. It was everything that the other place wasn't.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting, because in this one place, which I call the consciousness of God, every adjective that you could describe a positive feeling, vibration, energy, that's what that place was. And in this other place, anything negative, any adjective that you could think of that was negative, that's what that was. So it was kind of like a duality thing.
Exactly. The expression of duality.
Yes, the expression of duality. So then, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we've actually got another caller. Maybe somebody has a question about where you're where you are now out in the cosmos has a question about what it is that you're describing. Let's pick up a caller and see if they'd like to ask a question about what you're talking about right now. I'm talking to area code 111. Are you there?
Hello?
Hello? Hi, who are we talking to?
Who, us?
Do you have a question?
Yes, I have one really good question. Do you believe in hell?
Do I believe in hell?
Yes.
I believe that people create hell in their reality.
Hey, I have a question. When you go to hell, can you tell Hitler I said hi?
Okay. Well, we have muted that fellow because he obviously isn't really wanting to participate in the way that we want to participate today, talking about the God consciousness, etc. So I beg our listeners forgiveness on that. And so go ahead, Sandy. You were telling us a little bit about the duality there and what happened next.
Sure. What happened was, so I was over in the negative aspect of the God consciousness, and it did not feel good. It really didn't feel good. So I moved back. I asked the other part. I said, I want to come back into that, and so I moved back into there, and I asked it, what was that about? And this is what they told me. We want you to know that everything comes from the consciousness of God. Absolutely everything. Even everything negative. It still comes from us. So you cannot say that there's anything outside, nothing outside of the consciousness of God, because it all comes from us. Now, it has different purposes and reasons, right? So, and it plays out differently, but it's interesting, actually, and I'm just going to go back to that caller. It's interesting that he talks about a specific person that the world would look at as being negative and bad. And I stopped looking at things as being negative or positive, or I stopped calling things good or bad. I started seeing a bigger picture, and that's partly one of the things of being able, or having the dragons come into me, is where I can see through different eyes and different perceptions, different realities, and how we might perceive something on one level, actually many, many multi-levels. So this kind of just follows through with there is nothing outside of God. And I could say God, I could say source. You could use whatever words you wanted to. It didn't really matter. But understanding that there is the consciousness, there is that one mind. So that's where I was. That's what they wanted me to know, is that there's nothing outside of us.
Right. So
then I went in the Merkaba. I went back into back to the house. I went to bed. The next night, when I went to meditate again, sat down, started to meditate, and boom, there was the Merkaba, and I thought, oh, here we go again. Well, this time I floated up, and I didn't leave the atmosphere of the earth. I just kind of floated around the earth, and I saw all of these, and they looked like they were probably located in larger cities. But I kind of just floated around and looked at everything, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And at that point, I really didn't get it. So when I came back to the room, and I was more present in the room, I'm thinking to myself and asked this question, what was all that about? And so they said that we're going to give you a meditation, and we want it to go global. And I kind of chuckled because anyone that knows me knows that I'm not global at all. So I said, okay, tell me what it is. And they showed me what the meditation was. So then I had to write it down. And it is very powerful. In the QHHT session, the hypnosis session, we use a pyramid of white light. In the meditation, I also use a pyramid of white light. It is a very powerful symbol. I will not say it's I will never put a good or a bad over anything, because I know the power of the subconscious, and that the symbol itself represents like a protection. And so what I was showing was putting these pyramids of white light over the cities in your own state, basically the 3 or 4 largest cities in your state, and then whatever country you're living in, to like basically alphabetically kind of go through all of the different states or provinces or wherever you live, and write down all the different 3 or 4 major cities in all of these states. And then each day do the meditation with your state and one of these other ones. And then the next day choose a different one. Always using your state as well, but using another state. So you're kind of broadening and going all over your particular country that you live in. Now, you don't have to think about any of the other countries. You just do this for your own country.
So no matter where in the world you are, you just kind of broaden your areas like that. I was wondering if you would give us a little demonstration of the meditation, but maybe kind of a brief version, because we're running out of time. I'm not sure if we have enough time or not. Is that something you'd like to do, or only you know about kind of how long that is? We've got about 15 minutes left in the program. What do you think? You think it's a better one to do at home alone on your own, depending on where you are in the planet, or?
I think so, but mostly I think that because it's very visual. So some people are they take a little bit longer to kind of proceed through. Like I can do it very quickly, but if I was to tell,
why don't you give us a little taste of it anyway?
Okay, sure. If you just imagine, and close your eyes, and you think or consider whatever you consider to be Source or God or your higher self, whatever you believe is the highest power you have contact with. I will use Source, but you can use whatever you want to. So now place a pyramid of white light around you so that you are completely surrounded by the pyramid of white light. Anchor yourself into this vision. Not only are you safe and protected, you have a clear connection to Source. Now think of Source and think of the earth, and bring the energy from Source down through the top of your head and let it fill every cell of your body. And when your body is filled with the light, the essence of Source, send a beam of light to the heart of the earth. Imagine the pyramid you placed around you to become filled that is now flowing through your body. Send this energy out from your body into the pyramid of white light, and imagine this energy going into every cell, every atom, every molecule of this pyramid. Now think of your home. Place a pyramid of white light over and under your home. Send the white light from your body out to this pyramid until every atom, molecule, and cell that is in the pyramid is completely infused with this energy. Now think of the city or town that you reside, or the county if you live in a rural area, and place a pyramid of white light over and underneath it. Send the energy from your body out to this pyramid, imagining every cell, every atom, every molecule that is in the city being filled with light from Source. Now think of the 3 or 4 largest cities in your state, pyramid of white light over each city, sending the energy from your body into each of these pyramids, one at a time. Imagine all of the cells, atoms, and molecules in each of those cities being filled with light from Source. Now think of your state and place a pyramid of white light over and under your state. Send the white light out from your body to every atom, cell, and molecule in your state, and fill the state with light from Source. Now think of the other states that you will be working with today and place a pyramid of white light over and under the 3 or 4 major cities of that state. Send white light energy from Source to fill every cell, atom, and molecule in those cities. Now think of that state and place a pyramid of white light over and under that state. Send the energy from your body into that state and fill every cell, atom, and molecule in that state with the light of energy from Source. Now think of your country. Place a pyramid of white light over and under your country. Draw the energy from Source to completely fill the country with white light. Imagine the light of Source moving to and in and through every atom, cell, and molecule in your body, or in the country. Now think of the continent you live on and place a pyramid of white light over and under your continent, drawing the energy from Source to completely fill the continent with white light. Imagine every cell, atom, and molecule being filled with a white light from Source. Now think of the earth and place a pyramid of white light around the earth so that the earth is completely surrounded by the pyramid of white light. Draw in the white light from Source, filling every cell, atom, and molecule on and in the earth with energy from Source. Hold this image for a couple of minutes, sending love and gratitude to every cell, atom, and molecule for their participation on and in the earth. The white light from Source has a consciousness of its own, and it knows best what each consciousness in each cell, atom, and molecule needs, and it will supply whatever is needed at this time to assist in the very best way possible. Know this, understand this, and release yourself from the need to send anything other than love and gratitude. Breathe deeply and center yourself back into your body. Breathe your awareness back into your body. Say a soft thank you to end your meditation and open your eyes.
Sandy, thank you. That was beautiful, and thank you to the white dragon who inspired this beautiful meditation. I have to tell you, as I was following along, it was so beautiful. It was kind of like nesting dolls, you know. The pyramids were like nesting dolls. It was amazing.
Exactly.
So really, expanding in that way, in and out, but yet with a pyramid. Beautiful.
As a practitioner, we have come to understand that every atom, every cell in our body has consciousness. Mm-hmm. And what I'm understanding from, communicating with White Dragon is that in the near future, in the days, weeks, months to come, it could get a little chaotic in our world. It may or may not in some people's world, but the white light energy is going to infuse everybody with what they need. So I may not know exactly what somebody else needs, but I am sending them the love energy from Source. That's the key to this meditation, and it just it flows really, really well. And that's what the trip out to the consciousness of God showed me. Don't have a judgment on anybody. Just send them love. Just send them love. That's all you need to do. So,
well, thank you so much. That's a beautiful way, to wind down our show this evening is to take that message that we hear so often, but that really means so much and is so very powerful and real and true. And so we're going to send love to everybody on this show, everybody who's listening to the show, everyone in the chat room. I want to send you love and thank you so much for joining me and Sandy. And Sandy, tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you in Oklahoma.
Sure. You can reach me by phone at 580-704-9343, or you can visit my website, which is whole, as in your whole body, so wholeselfspiritjourney.com. And you can also email me, especially if you want a copy of this meditation. Just email me, and I'll be happy to send it to you. My email is wholeselfspiritjourney@gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much. And for anyone who'd like to get a hold of me, Candace Craw-Goldman, you can find me at newearthjourney.com. And to find a qualified QHHT practitioner near you so that you can go meet some dragons or visit some crystal planets or have some other sort of amazing adventure, please visit the website, DoloresCannonQHHT.com. That's Dolores Cannon, QHHT.com. I want to thank N5D once again for making this show possible, and all of you who've stayed with us this evening. Thank you, everyone. Good night, everyone, and all shall be well.